All right, welcome back. We're doing J Raw again, whatever I called it. No notes, just my reactions based on everything I've learned. Everything's off the cuff. I'm not looking at anything. I just want to break down the Rams draft class without looking at anything. Just that way you have an idea of what's on my mind. Not that I normally look at notes because I was asked like, hey, do you read off a script? No, I actually don't. I'll have bullet points every now and then, but for the most part, I go off the cuff, as you guys probably know by now. But let's start off from the beginning here. Let's start off with Steve Avila. Okay, Avila, what he's going to do, he's going to come in immediately. He's going to play either guard or center. I believe he'll play left guard for the LA Rams. He could play right guard, but he started at left guard at TCU, so it makes more sense, I would say, to play him there. I have an all-pro level type of guy, as far as when you look at it, just his potential. People ask me player comparison. I say Joel Bitonio of the Cleveland Browns. I see it. I remember Joel Bitonio coming out, and I was just like, man, Bitonio is going to be a star, and sure enough, he ended up being a star, or as much of a star as an interior offensive lineman in the NFL can be. But anyway, Steve Avila, what do you want to know about this guy? Well, I mean, at the end of the day, he's going to be a plug and play guard. He was the 36th overall pick, a pick that has seen Breece Hall go off the board last year, Javon Holland, guys like Deebo Samuel, Xavier McKinney, guys like that. I mean, there have been really good picks at that pick 37 recently. So that pick is riding high, and I think the Rams got a really good one in Steve Avila. Was he the guy that I was aiming for at that pick? No, and here's why. If you guys remember, if you didn't see it, definitely check it out. But in my mock draft, which I got 3 players that they drafted correctly, in my mock draft, I didn't really expect them to go offensive line that early. I had, excuse me. I had them taking offensive line, like 5th round, I think is when I started, or 6th round, or what have you. But the fact they went Avila shows me that, yes, they're going all in on offensive line, not offensive line, but offense in general, right? You look at last year, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in that range of different offensive line combinations, right? So you bring in Avila. He's going to help your line immediately. He's a guy that in 900 snaps, he only gave up 1 sack. He's a guy that works in not only the run game, but also the passing game. He's got a wide base, he's strong. So I feel really good about Avila at 36. Anytime you draft a guy at 36, unless it's a quarterback that you really like for the future, that guy needs to be a starter. That guy needs to be a starter right away, and I think Avila is that guy. So Avila, to me, great pick there. We move on to pick 77. This was a little interesting. They had the pick at 69. They definitely thought about drafting Marte Mapu out of Sacramento State, according to a source. But they decided not to do that. They wanted to trade down. That is when I believe the Giants traded up, if I'm not mistaken, for Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver from Tennessee that I love, right? My number 1 wide receiver. Well, they were a little upset, I guess, to say the least, what I was told. Missing out on him at 76. Mapu goes off the board 1 pick before them after, trading down to 89. They still had that 77th pick, so they trade out of 69. They pick at 89. They had the 77th pick, and they end up picking Byron Young. And Byron Young, 25 years old, this is somebody out of Tennessee that has been through adversity. When you look, first off, he starts off and, he's a guy at Dollar General. He's an assistant manager at Dollar General. He works in JUCO. We've said this story a lot on the channel, but you get the point. Works from JUCO, then goes to Tennessee, and now he's with the Rams. You're getting another day 1 starter. He's not perfect, but I've seen a lot of he's not a good run defender going on around the interwebs, and I just have to push back on that and say that's absolutely not true. He had an 18.8 run stop rate, which is, I believe it is the highest among all eligible edge defenders in this class, according to PFF. So, I wouldn't say that's true at all. I mean, does he need refinement in the run game? Certainly. But, is he going to provide juice off the edge? Absolutely. Is he going to, still be able to stop the run? Well, clearly he did it in college. So, you can't use the SEC as, kind of a way to back your argument and then be like, well, the SEC doesn't really matter. It's college, whatever. No, it definitely matters. And so Byron Young is somebody starts day one opposite Michael Hoyt, in my opinion. And right off the bat, the Rams start off with 2 starters back to back. The next pick at 89 is probably my least favorite of all the picks, only because of who was there. I had a first-round grade on Adebawore out of Northwestern and Adetomiwa Adebawore to be exact, but he ends up going off the board in the 4th round to the Indianapolis Colts. Shout out to Chris Ballard. That is a great pick. The Rams went with Kobe Turner, very intelligent guy. He was on the Matt Waldman, or not Matt, excuse me. He was on the Brett Coleman, YouTube. Matt Waldman's another great film guy, but Brett Coleman, he was on his show, and I believe it was the Bootleg podcast, and he goes on and he breaks down film, and this is a guy that's just multi-talented. He's a singer, I believe. I've been told, TikTok and whatnot, but this is somebody that feels very likable. This is somebody that feels like a leader. This is somebody that the Rams really like, and you could say, well, okay, the boards didn't align, okay, like mock drafts have him going in the 6th round. Guys, we got to get over the mock draft thing. We really have to get over the mock draft thing. I got to do a better job. I think I really started to do a better job this year, but I really got to do a better job as a whole. Like, he's not flying up boards because we don't know what those boards are. Mock drafts and those mock draft databases are better than anything that we had 10 years ago, so to speak. Mock draft machines are new for the most part. I mean, we're living in the mock draft machine era. It has never been easier to make a mock draft. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where you had to write it on a sheet of paper, or you had to post it as an article, or you had to do what I did and how I got my start. And I posted a fan post on Turf Show Times comment section. But at the end of the day, that's how you did it. You didn't have a machine. So now that we have a machine, we have a board. When you have the board, that's almost setting, like, you have to remember, it's their opinion. At the end of the day, it was created by a person. It's subjective. And it's the same thing with PFF. I mean, PFF, not everything, but some metrics are subjective, like, their grades. We don't know what their grades are. I mean, they tell us what their grades are, whatnot, but they see things different. A human had to go through and decide, okay, you are this, you are this. So anyway, just wanted to throw it out there. But anyway, Kobe Turner. My thoughts are, I like the player more, but I got to say, if they love him that much, they see him as a starter, then he's a day one starter. I mean, on that defensive line, I know Jordan Rodriguez's latest, post on the Athletic, latest article, kind of given the 53-man roster, not 53, but like a depth chart, she had him starting over Marquise Copeland. I'm not ruling that out. And as a matter of fact, I mean, when you watch the tape, I went back and watched it. I mean, I still stand by that. I felt like it was a little bit of a, quote unquote reach, even though, again, that kind of goes against what I was saying. I don't really think it was a reach. I think it was more so I had a higher grade on Adetomiwa Adebawore out of Northwestern, 1st round grade to be exact. But, at the end of the day, they like him a lot. And, a guy that I actually met with at the Senior Bowl a few years back, Michael Pierce, just a great dude. He told me straight up that he had been following my content, Downtown Rams, all of that. And we had a nice chat. But, he's one of the regional scouts in, I believe, the southern part of the country. And so, I think when you, when you look at it and you find out, okay, this was his guy, that makes you feel pretty good. I have a lot of respect for Pierce, and just, talking with him a little bit, I can tell you this was his guy. Like, that's what it was reported. And if it was reported, like this was really his guy, Kobe Turner was his guy, and he was pounding the table for him, by all means, like, he deserves his props. I think he's great. And, I think I think Turner, again, I had a 5th round grade on, but I think he'll end up outplaying that. I said on draft night when they drafted him, I'm like, okay, this is going to be the John Johnson of the class. I didn't like the John Johnson pick as much. I had a higher grade on Desmond King. They went with John Johnson, and, I ended up being wrong. I mean, Desmond King was still good, so that probably tells me that Adetomiwa Adebawore will end up being good, but there's something about Kobe Turner. He gets to go into a defensive line room with Aaron Donald, and I mean, Eric, Henderson. I mean, it's just, I think they have a really good, nucleus in place for him. And then you look, they had a 4th round pick here. They go out and get Stetson Bennett, who I actually broke the news live on the air. Bennett is a very interesting pick here because a lot of people, he's a very polarizing character. He's somebody that won 2 national championships at Georgia. There's some that say, okay, Georgia carried him, the defense carried him, the offense carried him. And then there's some people that believe like, hey, this guy isn't getting enough respect. I think that I would go with the latter. He's not getting enough respect. I think when you watch the tape, I had a 4th round grade on him. This is somebody that when I watched the tape, I was like, okay, he's better than I thought. There's a tweet that I didn't go and delete like people do. I'm okay admitting when I'm wrong. Bennett, when I watched him in college, I was like, I didn't watch a ton on him, right? I don't want to skew my outlook on players, so I normally don't watch a ton of college football because I just don't want to skew my evaluations on them. So I didn't watch a ton on Bennett, but when I did, I just was like, okay, college quarterback, probably a 7th round, UDFA, whatever. But then when I dove into the tape, and this is why I do this, right? I dive into the tape and I'm like, he's making these far hash sideline throws where I'm like, okay, I don't see many quarterbacks doing that. This is a really good pick by the Rams because people were saying this was a reach. This is exactly where he belongs. And being picked in the 4th round does a multitude of things. Here's the thing. The Rams needed a backup quarterback. That's no, shock there. I made that very clear. There was only one quarterback on the roster, Matthew Stafford. Sounded like Bryce Perkins wasn't coming back. Maybe he does. I don't know. I'm not expecting him to. Sounded like John Wolford wasn't coming back. And I know they had Case Cookus, but, he's cooking in the USFL. And they could go with the USFL route. They could go with the XFL route, but you have to wait a little bit. The XFL still in session for a little bit longer. USFL is in session a little bit longer. So the Rams decide to go out and get a guy that can play right away. And what I mean by that is he's not going to start over Stafford, but if Stafford were to go down, and that's a very likely scenario, let's be honest here. Stafford is not a guarantee to stay healthy. He did suffer an injury last year that kept him out the rest of the year. I just think that we need to be realistic here and realize that, man, there's a chance Stetson Bennett could start this year in some capacity, whether that's a game or 2 games or 3 games. Hopefully not, and nothing against him, but you just don't want to see Stafford go down with an injury. But they brought him in because they believe that that's certainly a possibility. They need a number 2, and they couldn't go out and get a guy like Jaron Hall. They couldn't go out and get a guy like Clayton Tune. They wanted a guy that was ready to play right away. And Stetson is. He's older. It makes sense. So I like this pick. He's durable. He's a winner. He's a leader. You can say, his arrest off the field, all of that, whatever. I've heard a lot of that held against him, but Baker Mayfield went number 1 overall with that type of, similar arrest, the misdemeanor, really stupid arrest too. Just like, he was drunk and just being stupid, and he's admitted to that. So Baker ended up coming back to he ended up coming with the Rams last year. But the point is that, look, Stetson, maybe it's a mistake at the end of the day. Maybe it was overblown. We weren't there, but I can tell you right now that the Rams wouldn't have drafted him if they were worried about that. They went high character, high floor, hardworking type of guys. And Stetson Bennett is a former walk-on that started at the number 1 program in the country. You can't take anything away from him. He has earned everything. He's worked his tail off. And so I like this pick. At the end of the day, I think this is going to be better than people think. And when you look at Stetson, he just has that it factor to me. I feel like he's going to be a guy that gets slept on a bit, but he's got that it factor. And, if people want to sleep on him, then they can sleep on him all they want. But I won't be doing that. I'm not going to be that person. So really like Bennett. And then the next pick was Nick Hampton out of App State, who I've talked about on this channel. And, I think Hampton is he's a really interesting pass rusher right now. Not really much of a run defender. He will have to improve in that category. And I think really what's going to happen is he's going to get under the hood with NFL coaching. And I think NFL coaching is going to get the most out of him. He's going to go right into that system, that scheme, what have you. And he's going to, deal with it the right way. And I think when you look at him, he doesn't need to start right away. He can contribute to the Rams as a situational, rotational pass rusher. Kind of similar to, Obadiah Okoronkwo, who they also got in the 5th round back in 2018, I believe. So, I think when you look at Nick Hampton, this is definitely somebody that is going to add some juice to that room as well. Very athletic guy. The upside's there. Could he be a starter down the road? I see starter potential down the road, just kind of similar to Bennett. Not saying he will end up being a franchise quarterback, but I do see starter there if need be. And so, I think with Nick Hampton, he's probably going to take a little bit to get under, to get going. But when he is finally, going and everything, it's going to look pretty sweet. So I'm excited for him. Byron Young and everything, I just think that they needed to address the pass rusher room and, the edge. And I think they definitely did that. They did a nice job with that. So you move on, and it is Warren McClendon, who they go out and they draft. And in case you've been living under a rock in regards to this channel, I love Warren McClendon Jr. out of Georgia. He went 2 straight seasons without giving up a sack. He's got a nasty first punch, just can neutralize guys at the point of attack. Good anchor. I think really his biggest issue is that his footwork can get a little wonky at times. I think that's really, that's the thing there. But he can develop. He still has some ceiling to him. He still has upside. And so when I look at a guy like that, I think of a higher end version of Tremaine Ankrum, who they drafted a few years back out of Clemson. You get him from a winning program. You get him as a starting offensive tackle. Now he can kick in at guard, or he can take over for tackle down the road. Havenstein's contract isn't forever, so maybe he takes over for Havenstein over time. But I really like the move at the end of the day. I really like this move. To me, going out, obviously you already got Bennett, so to add another Georgia Bulldog is pretty cool, but this guy's legit. I had him as a top 10 tackle. He's not just a guy, and I've seen a lot of Jag comments about him. He's not the most athletic dude, but I really liked his tape, and I thought he was one of the underrated, flying under the radar type of guys. Speaking of which, another guy I just absolutely loved was Davis Allen. When you look at what Davis Allen did on tape, it's hard to see how he fell this far. I thought he could have gone in the 2nd or 3rd round. I said it on the stream. I'll say it again. He played at Clemson, but if he played with a Trevor Lawrence or a Deshaun Watson instead of, Ugalele, or however you say his name, I hope I didn't mispronounce that. Probably did. He's going 2nd, 3rd round. I mean, I remember Jordan Leggett getting more hype, and this guy just has more to his overall structure. He's built like a tight end. He ran a 4.84. I think that's probably what hurt him, but I don't care. He doesn't play like that on tape. And this guy can't separate, but it doesn't matter. He has a 91% catch percentage in contested catch situations. He's a good blocker. I think this is a guy that, first off, the new tight end coach, I believe Nick Haley, said, like Sean McVay had said, that like he was all over him. He was really trying to force their hand to draft him. And Sean is also a tight end coach at heart too, because that's like one of the coaching spots you got to start at. So I think this is great. Anytime you see Sean McVay and company, buying into a tight end, drafting a tight end, it's a good sign. Those guys know how to find tight ends, and Davis Allen just has it all. I understand he didn't run a great 40 time, but on tape, if you're speaking just on tape, and this is why I don't put too much stock into the testing numbers, I think Davis Allen's the real deal and can be a starter down the road. Probably not a day one starter. I would imagine he's probably the 4th guy on the depth chart right now, behind Hunter Long and Bryson Hopkins and obviously Higbee, but by the end of the year, maybe we're talking about tight end number 2. And with Higbee and Bryson Hopkins only under contract for this year and this year only, We don't know what the future holds, but he could very well bump all the way up to number 1 by next year. So definitely look out for Davis Allen. Tight ends take a while to develop. They have to learn basically the wide receiver position and the offensive line position. But if he does develop and, he is able to work early, then they got themselves a steal, and I believe they did. Then you go out and you get Puka Nacua, I believe 2 spots afterwards out of BYU, and he's just somebody, when I watch the tape on him, just really like an intelligent guy. You can see he's just a Rams receiver. He's got that captain patch on his jersey. He's going to go up and track the ball. He can do that. But I think the thing that is so evident on tape is when you watch Puka Nacua, first off, Jaren Hall stands out. This is a guy that I wanted the Rams to grab at quarterback for a reason. But when I was watching Jaren Hall tape, Puka Nacua was his guy, and that shows trust. And when you trust a guy, it means that he's probably pretty darn good at hauling in the football. And that was Puka Nacua. He was. A lot of people talk about his versatility, how he can be used in those jet sweeps and all that. But I saw a route runner. I saw an intelligent guy that can find the soft spot in the zone. I saw somebody that can play a little bit above his frame. I saw somebody that can get back to the ball and kind of readjust himself, for an underthrown ball, because, Jaren Hall had a lot of those due to his shoulder, because he injured his shoulder. But when I look at those back shoulder fades and keeping your feet in bounds, he just wants to do that, man. He has the ability to do that, and he has the spatial awareness. He always knows where he's on the field. You see in the end zone, you only need to get 1 foot down, my guy. It's college. He's going to get 2 feet down. So really think Puka Nacua has a chance to push, at least Lance McCutcheon, but potentially Ben Skoranek for that number 4, number 5 wide receiver job. So we'll see what ends up happening. But at the end of the 5th round, I really like this pick. I like it more and more, I think, by the hour, by the day. But big fan of Puka Nacua. And then the next pick, I think, might have been the steal of the entire Rams draft. And that's saying a lot, because I thought they got some really good value. But Travius Hodges Tomlinson, anytime you get a guy that's 90th percentile in just about every athletic category, who falls to the 6th round because he's short, a guy that won the Jim Thorpe Award and has NFL bloodline with LaDainian Tomlinson, who's NFL royalty at the running back position. I don't know what the league was thinking, but you have to take him. And so the Rams were like, yeah, we got to take him at 182. And, Travius Hodges Tomlinson's a day 1 starter at nickel. I don't care where he was drafted. If you want to use the 6th round pick against him, I'll gladly bring up Jordan Fuller. Jordan Fuller was a 6th round pick, and I didn't even like the pick, and he ended up being a starter and has looked really good. So he's somebody that, I look at, and, I think that Travius Hodges Tomlinson is going to be one of those slot gods, if you will. I think he'll be like Nickel Roby-Coleman, but I think he's got more upside than Nickel Roby-Coleman. I think he's going to be a serious problem in the NFL. I think the biggest issue with him, you got to worry about his penalties. He had a lot of those, but this guy played against Georgia in the national title game. He's played in huge games. Again, Jim Thorpe Award winner, goes to the best cornerback in the country. To me, this was a no-brainer. In the 6th round, you're drafting guys with upside, and you're drafting guys that maybe can't start. You're normally not finding guys like this that can start right away. And to me, he's no-brainer slot corner day 1 for the Rams THT. So then next up, a guy that's probably not starting, and not for a while and maybe never, is O'Shawn Mathis out of Nebraska. TCU also played at TCU, transfer to Nebraska. Nebraska was just all over the place, man. With all due respect, I know there's Nebraska fans that watch this, but I'm sure you can admit, as a Kansas Jayhawk fan, they were literally trying to recruit the Kansas Jayhawk, head coach, Lance Leipold during the season. I mean, it was that bad. So Nebraska was all over the place, and I understand, like, he transfers there, he's expecting it just didn't go his way, right? Like the tape didn't look great. You look at the TCU tape though, and you're like, okay, O'Shawn Mathis. And so when I watch O'Shawn Mathis, this is clearly an obvious pick in the 6th round. You go out and you get him, and quite honestly, he's just going to be a guy that sits, and he's going to develop. He'll play special teams in all likelihood. Maybe he won't make the roster, but I think this is somebody that's, a high-end practice squad guy, late, back-end roster guy, but You stash him. It's like a draft and stash in the NFL. He's got these long arms. He's 6'5", 250. He's got the size and everything. He just needs refinement. He needs seasoning. He needs to learn. And I think that's what the Rams are planning to do. They go out and they get what I think was called on the NFL Network. I think it was Lance Zierlein. He called him a lottery ticket. You wait 2 to 3 years and see if he pans out and you hit the lottery. I'm all for that. I think that's exactly what you're supposed to do with those 6th and 7th round picks. And I like the pick. So then you move on, Zach Evans, right? Zach Evans falls to 215, late, 6th round and whatnot. And like my thing with Zach Evans, they trade up to get him. This is a guy with 2nd, 3rd round upside that can be a future starter in the NFL. I compared him to Dalvin Cook with his ability to, obviously he has great speed and can get to those edges and, really bounce to the outside and make him pay. But he can also, make things happen in between the tackles. And he runs with a deceptive amount of power. You're not expecting it when you watch him and then he lowers his shoulder. Kind of the same thing I see with Dalvin Cook. He's a little bit bigger than Dalvin Cook, I believe, but at the end of the day, I think Zach Evans was an absolute steal for the Rams. One of their best picks for sure. Anytime you're picking in the 200s, you're able to get a guy that has starting level upside at the running back position. You're onto something. Talk about 2 7th-round picks over the last, bunch of years. You talk about Chris Carson and Isaiah Pacheco. Carson's now out of the NFL because of, the injuries that led to his retirement. But Chris Carson was a hell of a player at at Seattle. And then you look over at Isaiah Pacheco and it's like, Pacheco, I don't have to tell you how good Pacheco is. So you like getting those running backs late in the draft, and I would say this is great value and could be fantastic value. He could be the starting running back as early as next year if they decide not to, bring back Cam Akers. So then we move on to the 7th round, and at 223, the Rams went out and they got Ethan Evans, who apparently is related to Heath Evans, the former tight end, fullback, H-back, whatever you want to call him in the NFL with the New England Patriots. When I watch Ethan Evans, because I was able to find some tape on him, 70-yard leg maximum, I would say. This is a guy that can get hang time. He can coffin corner it. He's going to be a starting punter for the Rams. So another starter the Rams drafted in this draft. And when I look at Ethan Evans, I see a guy that can help you in the kickoff game as well, because what they did is in UDFA, they went out and got Christopher Dunn, who won the Lou Groza Award for the most accurate and the best kicker in the country in college football. And he has the accuracy, but he doesn't have the leg. So that was a big reason why he didn't get drafted. He couldn't have those touchbacks. He doesn't have the leg for that. Well, now you have Ethan Evans who does. So Ethan Evans has the leg. It's kind of like a tandem there. There's another guy that's also competing in the kicker room as well, UDFA. But the point is that Ethan Evans, this is a guy that the special teams coordinator, Chase Blackburn, went out, investigated, went on the road, and found this guy at Wingate. And Sean McVay didn't even know where Wingate was, but he definitely made sure to give props to the new special teams coordinator, Chase Blackburn. And I can tell you right now, Chase Blackburn's already earning his stripes, if you will, because just to show that much ownership and dedication to that special teams coordinator position, going out, trying to find punters and whatnot. Really cool stuff. Was glad to hear it. And then the next pick in the 7th round was Jason Taylor II, who's gone through some adversity, lost his father at the age of 8. But he is a hell of a football player. I had a 6th round grade on him. Just an over aggressive, really aggressive guy. That's just the name of the game for him is just play at 110 miles an hour. And you see that. That's good and that's bad. And I think when you get to the NFL, you can kind of harness that into what you want it to be. He's going to be great on special teams. This is a core special teamer that can develop into a starter. Think Rodney McLeod of the St. Louis Rams, and think of Los Angeles Rams safety who's now with the Cincinnati Bengals, Nick Scott. That's the type of guy that they're going after in the 7th round, and that's who you draft. You draft projects, you draft guys that can help you as specialists like long snappers, kickers, punters. And then your third thing, you draft special teams guys that could potentially down the road maybe play a role on the offense or defense, but You love their special teams ability, prowess, all of that. And so Jason Taylor the second, we have not heard the last of. He's not just going to go on special teams and be forgotten about. He's going to fight hard to try to steal one of those safety jobs, if not now, then down the road. So really like that pick, as well as the last pick of the draft in Desjuan Johnson, who I absolutely love. I've talked about him on the channel. Out of Toledo, he's built the same type of frame as Donald. I mean, obviously not as bulky, but, you know, that kind of undersized, quicker than, you know, really quick first step, lightning quick first step, guy that contorts his body. He's going to use his hands. He needs to use his hands a little bit better, but when he does use his hands, he's really hard to stop. And so he's just a guy that is going to shoot the gaps and make plays on the football. I expect him to have a really good preseason. I'm excited to see him in action, but those are my thoughts. I think at the end of the day, the Rams have an A+ grade. You can argue with the grade all you want. I said on the stream, I went through, I watched tape, I studied these guys. Still an A+ for me, because yes, not every player I would grade an A+, but the reason it becomes an A+ is they had a mission. This draft class going into this offseason, they blew up most of their team in the offseason. I was not happy about it. I voiced my displeasure. I said they weren't doing it the right way. Well, now insert this draft class. Now we have a vision. 14 picks. They went in with 11 going into this draft. They came away with 14. The 14 draft picks that they made, 13 out of the 14, I believe, 100% make the roster. O'Shawn Mathis might be a guy they want to stash on the practice squad, but the point is that 13 guys are probably going to make it out of this draft, at least. And maybe 14. Maybe O'Shawn Mathis makes it. And so now you have 14 guys. You have 14 guys out of this draft on your roster. You had, 42 going into this? So right off the rip, now that's 56. You have 56 guys. Now it's some competition. And you have a UDFA class I'm going to get into in another video, but I just really like what the Rams did. They showed vision. They showed the fact that, hey, this is calculated. We have a plan. Source told me that they felt like this was a really calculated draft. That was the word he used. So, I think at the end of the day, this draft is how you reel in the next era of football for, the Los Angeles Rams. You didn't bring in a franchise quarterback day one because you already have one in Stafford. But Stetson Bennett is somebody that he's the best of both worlds. He can be a career backup. He's a fourth rounder, right? You're not stuck to him. But if he makes something out of nothing, if he turns into, the future face of the franchise, you got him in the fourth round. So you did a nice job. So I think they're in a good situation where things don't go well this year for whatever reason, and they're picking high next year. They can grab a quarterback and they don't feel committed necessarily to Stetson Bennett being their long-term answer, But that's the thing, okay? That gives them flexibility. But adding guys like Avila, who are day one starters, adding guys like Byron Young, day one starters, older guys, but guys that can reel in consistency, day one readiness, high floor. This is the foundation that they're setting. They wanted guys. I think this is why they avoided certain players, that had medical concerns. Because in the past, Terrell Lewis type of guys had burned them. So they avoided the medical concerns. They went out and they got football players they trust. They went out and got football players that are hardworking. They went out and got football players that are high character, that have shown their ability to fight through adversity, and are team captains. That is the thing. I really like the theme of this draft. There was a constant theme. You could say Zach Evans fell because of maturity issues, but I would say how many 20-year-olds do you know that don't have maturity issues, or, early 20-year-olds? So, all in all, A+ draft for the Rams. This is the best draft that I've covered in the history of me covering the Rams, which is, since 2016. So not obviously that long, but this is the best draft they've had. I feel very confident in saying that. On paper, after the draft, 2017 was an all-timer because you go out, you get Cooper Kupp, you have John Johnson III. They weren't able to bring all those guys back, but it was a really good draft, and you'll take it. But I think this one has a chance to be even better. You might not get a Cooper Kupp level player, but if you get a bunch of starters and maybe an all-pro, in Steve Avila, I think you've nailed it. So A+ draft for the Rams. this puts them right in contention, I think, to be that 7, that 6 seed. They're going to have a third place schedule. I do believe they're going to make the playoffs at 10-7 right now. Not because of this draft. I kind of felt that the whole time that they had some sort of plan, and they showed me they did. The NFC is not very good. I think there's still an opportunity to succeed, and so that's why I not only have an A+ grade, but I'm saying I think the Rams are going to make the playoffs at 10-7. So curious what you guys think in the comments section below. Let me know. This is going to do it for this video. In the next video, I will discuss the UDFAs. I just want to get through them, break them down a little bit, and get back to you on my findings. So that's going to do it for me. You guys take care, and I'll see you guys soon. Later, folks.